The case involving Judge Kavanaugh is not the only case grabbing headlines. Today, Congressman Keith Ellison is reportedly asking for a House Ethics Committee investigation into allegations he acted inappropriately with his former girlfriend. As both cases move forward, I sought out a national expert for clarification on what is the proper balance between protecting the alleged victims and those who are being accused.
Two high-profile men, both aspiring to high-profile positions, both facing accusations that could threaten that ascent.
I was at a conference for the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence.
We turn today to Dr. Diane Rosenfeld of Harvard Law School for perspective.
What would you say regarding the process as it's unfolding regarding both Judge Kavanaugh and Congressman Keith Ellison?
That's a really important question. We shouldn't rush to judgment, but we should have some kind of fair process that does not re-traumatize someone who comes forward.
And that fair process, Rosenfeld says, also calls for an awareness of the conversation's context.
False allegations are, according to the FBI, between 2 and 8% of rape cases, which means the overwhelming majority are not.
And while Rosenfeld says she is far from encouraging a culture of victim shaming, the person making the accusation must be ready for what will follow.
Was it inevitable that she would have to come forward in person, publicly, put her name, her face out there, and actually offer this testimony for her story to be taken seriously, given who she was making these accusations against? And what does that say about protecting the alleged victim versus giving the accused a right to defend himself?
So I think that she did have to come forward because I think that it would be unfair to hold those allegations against him without him being able to address the allegations.
Still, in both cases involving the judge and the congressman, Rosenfeld believes a fair, impartial, thorough investigation must be done.
There's a process through which someone who is accused of sexual misconduct can present his or her side of the story. And it's also true that a thorough investigation should be done before anyone is put up for such a highly public, important position that can affect so many lives in the public.
As for that hearing tomorrow, Rosenfeld also has some specific advice for the senators asking the questions.
What I would say about having a fair process that doesn't re-traumatize someone who's coming forward with allegations against a nominee is to not ask her questions beyond what she's alleged, meaning don't ask her victim-blaming questions about, for example, why didn't you report? Why didn't you do this?
And that is especially relevant, that advice, given what is widely documented, that victims of all ages and genders may well wait to report their experience, given a number of reasons, including that they just don't want that experience to define them, or they're simply in denial. That's something that we've been talking about here today, that we've read several articles on that very point. And again, Diane's point was specifically that you have to flesh this out. You have to get to the bottom of it when there's so much at stake, particularly with a Supreme Court nominee who will decide issues related to women's rights, really for the next generation.
It's just such an indication of what a divisive time we live in now in terms of partisan politics, and all sides to blame here. When we have these women coming forward with these accusations, it always falls into the political, and it's unfortunate that we're not having as really the important conversations we need to have about women coming forward. And we've seen it in sports. We saw it yesterday with Bill Cosby. It's not just politics, but it's the divisiveness that we're trying to get through. So hopefully we'll see some respect on both sides tomorrow.
We can hope for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you have seen the posts, you have heard the rumors, and we're going to verify what really happened during those fights at Valley Fair. You might have heard about it on social media. First, here's what you're saying about what's happening with Judge Brett Kavanaugh and the allegations.